Fast food stands and strip development is what we generally think of when we think of the Rainier Valley. It's hard to believe that just a few blocks from the heart of the Rainier Valley is this oasis in the city of Seattle, filled with rich plant materials and a long tradition of Japanese landscape design. The Kabota Gardens was founded by Fujitaro Kabota in the 1920s. It grew out of a hobby of his of gardening, and it developed over the years with much effort and sweat into this marvelous place. Fujitaro came to the United States at the turn of the century and migrated up to Seattle from San Francisco. He got into landscape almost as an outgrowth of a hobby of his and built this place up over the years. In 1942, after Pearl Harbor, and while his sons served the country as translators, he was evacuated or deported to a camp in Idaho. When the family came back here after the end of the war, the place was overgrown with weeds and scotch broom, but they started again to build this place up into what you see today. What we have here in the Kabota Gardens is not just a vast collection of Japanese plant material. There's a whole series of rare plants here, beautifully trained black pines, red pines, various types of maples, Japanese birches, and on and on and on the list goes. But the whole tradition of Japanese landscape is in place here. Everything you see here has been put here for a definite purpose. And this nurturing and carrying on of this tradition is what Fujitaro wanted to leave to the people of Seattle. As most of you know who are interested in Japanese landscape design or gardening, stones play an important role in the traditional formal Japanese garden. Every stone and rock that you see here was brought in from Snohomish County or other places throughout the Puget Sound area. And here we have the memorial stone, which was put here by Fujitaro almost as an afterthought about 20 years ago, when a Japanese gardener came to him and said, "Say, you don't have a memorial stone like all Japanese gardens are supposed to have." Well, Fujitaro turned to his sons, Tak and Tom, and said, "Well, let's get a memorial stone." So they went out to North Bend and got this stone, and luckily found a Japanese stonemason who just happened to be around at the right time to carve Fujitaro's name in the front of the stone and his life story in very small letters on the back side. In 1973, Fujitaro was awarded a highly distinguished prize by the Japanese government for fostering an understanding of Japanese design arts in the United States. A few years later, he died at the age of 93. Today, Tom Kabota, his son, is responsible for keeping this place up and maintaining the family's landscape business. It's a great and wonderful story so far, but there's a hooker to this story, and the hooker is that the Kabotos can no longer afford to keep the garden up in the manner in which Mr. Fujitaro Kabota once did. They have to dispose of the property, and a few years ago they entered into negotiations with the Seattle Park Department, who was anxious to acquire it as part of the park system, but the park department came to them and said, "Well, it's a nice place, it's a wonderful place, but can you give it to us for nothing?" Well, the Kabotos haven't been able to do that, and now are negotiating with a developer to build condominiums here. Even the most sensitive developer will be able to save very little of the gardens as you see today. The Japanese in Seattle and throughout the Northwest have made tremendous contributions in the design arts to our culture and our heritage. It would be wonderful if this place could be saved now and forever for future generations.